Hi everyone! So I'm going to do the taster session this evening for Runlates, so you can see what a Pilates for Runners class is all about, and we will see if there's anyone that wants to join us. We'll give it a second. So what we're going to cover, anyways, I can recap on this. There's three things that we really focus on in a Runlates class. So the first one is running form and posture. So all of the exercises that we do are really kind of geared around kind of making sure that we've got that correct kind of positioning, alignment, that all relate to kind of the things we want to be thinking about when we're on a run. So from what our feet are doing to what our upper body is doing, and obviously that very important bit in the middle of the pelvis, the hips, the legs. So I'm going to show you a few exercises. We're not going to do kind of a full-on class, but I'll show you some exercises that kind of demonstrate sort of those key principles, so you can see what you think and you can kind of join in if you like. So that's the first thing we're really going to look at. Second thing is strength. So I think Pilates is really well known for core strength, and some of the classic exercises actually work quite well for runners in terms of making sure we've got all of those abdominals working to hold us kind of standing tall in that kind of correct positioning, good form and posture sort of as we're running. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is flexibility. So again, for a lot of runners, we get very tight legs, very tight feet. For some of us, we can get quite tight kind of lower backs, upper backs, like in the shoulders, a little bit of tension. So I'm going to show you some exercises and a flexibility sequence that's quite good for that. So obviously there are Runlates classes, but also some of the exercises that we do work really well for warm up. So before you go on your run, or some of the flexibility stuff works really well afterwards too. So you can give them a go at home in your own time. I'm going to save this video down so it will be there when you want it, and watch again if you want to. So we will make a start in just a moment. I'll just see if anybody else wants to hop on. And the reason I thought I'd do this evening is that we've just come to the end of our first, oh hi Alison, hi Kathy. We've just come to the end of our first 6-week course, which is the first time we've done it, which was a big success. Feedback's been really, really positive, and they're going to start again on Monday. So I'm going to break it down. So we've got a foundation course on Monday. So if you know anyone, or if you are kind of new to running or new to Pilates, really good kind of foundation principles, kind of introduction to Pilates and to running, to get into those kind of good habits right from the start. And then the Tuesday class is going to be for experienced runners, so people that have maybe done Pilates before, have been running for a while and really want to kind of refresh some of the sort of key technique tips, etc. And also really kind of focus on that maintenance of that good form. So 2 different classes, we've broken it down, and then there's a couple of drop-in sessions on a Thursday evening and a Friday morning as well, if you wanted to try. So I'll stop talking and not exercising and I'll start to show you some exercises. So what I'll do as well, I'll nip back to the comments at the end. So if you've got any questions, pop them up there and then I will try and answer them at the end. So we tend to start feet hip distance apart, and when we say hip distance, quite often we kind of go here outside of the hips, whereas we want to go kind of hip sockets, which generally is kind of pretty similar to cheekbones, just as kind of a general guide. We're looking for that kind of second toe, knee, hip socket alignment, so we're really nice and parallel, and that is how we want to be running. We don't want to be turned out, turned in, so we're trying to replicate that right from the very start. And we want a nice little gentle bend in the knees, so not kind of fully locked out. Then I'm just going to turn to the side to show you what we talk about when we reference kind of a neutral pelvis, which is where we want to be. So when we say we want our pelvis neutral, basically we don't want to be tipping that pelvis forward. So if you've got your fingertips on your hip bones and you try and take them forward, sticking your bum out, you'll see you get a little bit more of a curve in that lumbar spine, which isn't actually very comfortable. And then when you tilt the other way, so if you almost imagine using your abdominals to kind of almost do a standing crunch, using your glutes to tuck under, and we're tilted back, that's not a very nice place to run for either. Our leg is probably going to land too far forward, not underneath the hip, that's where we want it. So we want to be in that nice neutral position. If our pelvis were a bucket, it would be nice and level, not tipping water out the front or out the back. So that's where we want to be. And then those 2 points, those nice kind of bony bits on the front of your pelvis. We want to be level. So if you imagine you've got kind of a spirit level on your waistband, that bubbles in the middle, and whether we're on two legs, whether we're on one leg, we still want that to be the case. Because when we're running, we want all our energy that's driving through our legs, taking us forward, and we don't want to be wasting any of that energy by kind of rocking or swaying side to side. So that's what we want to think about kind of in this area of the body. Pelvis is king. What happens here is going to really kind of protect the alignment further down and protect us from niggly knee injuries, ankle injuries, foot injuries. If we get this right, hopefully everything will follow. And then the upper body. So we're just going to do a quick exercise here. So we're going to inhale to take the arms up to the ceiling. We're going to exhale to hit them behind our head. Inhale to open the elbows, bring the shoulders up to the ears. Release and reach up, and then bring the arms down. So what an exercise like this is really good for is just opening up the upper body. So if you've been sitting at a desk all day or in the car, it's quite a nice exercise to do anyway, but particularly good for you to do before you kind of get out the door and go for that run. I'm going to do one more of these, just reaching up, bringing it down, opening across the front of the chest. As you bring those elbows back, bringing them back in, have a little look up, and then reach them down and around. You can add in calf raises to this if you want a little bit more challenge. And why we want the kind of shoulders back and down, head standing tall, is that if you think kind of as you start to get tired when you're on a run, if it's long, if you've just had a very long day, is we don't want kind of the upper body to slump. We don't want those shoulders to come forward. And if you think about what that does to your arms as your shoulders come forward, it means our arm swing is going to come across the body. We're probably going to rotate, which can cause some strain through our back, which again is not what we want. And we want to be really focused on making sure our chest is open, our elbows are coming back, and we're going forward with all that energy. So that's why it's really important to kind of open up sort of the top half of the body, as well as kind of activating what's going on down here sort of before we go out on a run. So next thing I just want to have a think about is what we're doing with our weight, like where it's distributed on our feet. So we want to be making sure we're not kind of tipping over, inward, over pronating, and equally we're not coming onto the outside of the foot. So we want to think about those 3 points in the heel, just on the pad of the foot, under the big toe and under the little foot. And to start with, we're just going to evenly find that midway point between those three. And then we know when we run, for a lot of runners, we want to be kind of on our forefoot or on our midfoot. We don't necessarily want to be landing on our heel. Not necessarily for everyone, but when you kind of land on your heel, it's effectively like you're putting on the brakes. So it's not particularly nice for your knees, it's not particularly nice for kind of your lower back. And so as far as possible, we want to try and land on the midfoot or even on the forefoot and roll through the foot, which is a lot more intense on your calf and Achilles, but it is also a little bit better for your knees and for your back. So when we think about the weight, when we do some of these exercises, we want to take our weight forwards. So if I just come to the side, take a nice inhale, and as I exhale, I'm just going to take the weight forward. It requires a little bit of core to do that and not hinge at the waist or not shift backwards. We want to stay standing nice and tall, like you've got a helium balloon reaching from the crown of your head, and just a little forward lean. So I can still wiggle my toes, but the weight's going forward. So I already feel like that's a much better place to go on a run from than if I'm kind of back here. So when we do our exercises, we try and keep that weight more towards the front of the foot to train the body, train the mind that that is where we want to be when we're running. It's going to be much more comfortable. So from here, we're just going to do some simple squats. So think about that weight again, try and keep it towards the front. Keep an inhale, and as you exhale, we just bend at the knee, reach the arms forward, and then come up again. So when we come down, we want to have a little look, make sure we've got that alignment of the second toe, the knee and the hip. We're not doing this, we're not doing this. We're still thinking about not going over onto either edge of that foot. And then when we come up, we try and really use the glutes to come up and out of those hips and stand tall. So we've got that good strength all the way through the body. So it should almost feel a bit like you're taking off, like a ski jump or a rocket. Something nice and strong. So that's where we do our squats from, because commonly we sit back on the heels for squats, which might be fine for general strength exercises, but we're going to try and keep that weight forward. So next thing we can put together with the squats is starting to get into our calves and Achilles, that we need to be really, really strong. So for that, we just look at coming up, so rolling through the foot. We get really stiff feet sometimes, whereas we want to try and get as much kind of movement and flexibility through. So when you're running, wherever you're landing on your foot, we want to imagine that we're just kind of in that toe off phase, rolling through. So to start with, we're just going to do some of these, and we're not going to forget about that pelvis. We're going to keep that spirit level across the middle, so there's no kind of catwalk style shifting from side to side. We're nice and straight, almost like we're between two panes of glass. And we can do that same thing from here. Just taking it side to side. We can add the arms. So we're thinking about the elbow driving back. I'm not letting my arms flail behind me. Nice and strong. Opposite arm to leg. Just having a little check there. And then nice and parallel. Shoulders away from the ears. So just on either leg. And we can put that together with our squats. So we can come down, we can lower the heels and come up, and the opposite way. So really good exercises to get into those calf muscles, to make sure they're really nice and strong. And we can stay down here, do some little heel raises, get into them a little bit deeper, and then come up. So a couple more exercises as we start to think about standing on one leg, because if you think when we run, we're generally on one leg or the other. We don't tend to do a run jumping. So starting with drawing the right leg to me, I'm going to keep those hips level, take the weight onto this leg, bring the knee up and draw it in. And then I'm going to lower it down and add a hamstring flick. So when we add that kick, we want to keep those thighs pretty much level. Use the hamstring to bring that foot up towards the bottom. Nice strong movement, so it's almost like a really slowed down, exaggerated version of when you run. So we want a good amount of flexion here to be able to bring that knee through when we're running. And we also want that leg to be nice and strong as we paw the ground away behind us as we're running along. Someone said to me it looks like a horse doing dressage, or a dog like trying to dig a hole, whatever works for you. But just focus on getting a good stretch, keeping that good alignment and form, and starting to warm up the backs of your legs as well as your hip flexors. So that's our kind of knee stretch sequence. We then build on that. So standing on this leg again, I'm going to pick this one up to hip height, tuck the toe behind my knee, and then we're going to just open the leg and bring it back. So the hips are still facing forward, but what we're doing here, and we do some similar exercises when we lie down on the mat, is we work into the muscles on the outside of the hip. So to keep that pelvis nice and level, we need our glutes and the muscles around here to be really strong to make sure we're not wasting that energy. I'm going to come to the other leg. So you want a good range of movement, and not a wobble, out of the hip, bring it back in. When we think about the breathing with Pilates, we tend to use the exhale when we're trying to get a better range or when there's a bit of effort. So exhaling to open, inhaling to bring it back in. And I find some of that focused breathing is quite mindful. It's quite good sometimes, I think, when I'm on a run as well, about timing my breathing with my steps, which just helps kind of regulate it if you're feeling out of breath or really struggling, and helps you go that little bit further. And then what we can do with this as well, because some of the exercises are quite hip intensive, we can bring the foot in front of the knee and also add on a single leg standing stretch, which just gets in to those back pocket, side of the hip muscles. So where we're working, we're also giving them a nice stretch. So I'm going to make sure I do the other side as well. And then for our dynamic single leg work, we kind of build on some of the things that I've just mentioned to you already. So we want to make sure when we're standing on one leg, we're thinking about these muscles on the outside of the hip to make sure we're not doing this. And we're thinking about the muscles on the inside of the leg as well to stop that knee coming in. So if you commonly get knee injuries, for a lot of us it's quite unstable as you run, and it's really easy for that knee to deviate across the body and for our hips to kick out to the side. So the 2 points we want to think about are here and here and here. So inside of the leg and the outside of the hip. So coming onto one leg, we can just take some little gentle squats, and this is a really good one to do in front of the mirror or on camera, just like this, and see if there's kind of any weakness there. I'm just going to do a couple for you, and I'm definitely shakier on this side when I do it in a mirror or on camera. See if you can spot. But yeah, those single leg squats, I think a lot of people say you should be doing like 50 to 100 of those. If you run a decent distance, you should be doing those every single day. I don't, I'm going to admit, but sometimes I do think it's really good. You can do it while you're having your dinner, you can do it brushing your teeth, just some of those single leg squats, or those kind of calf raises are just really basic exercise that get into those right muscles for you. So our dynamic single leg work is, I'm going to show you just one exercise. We're going to do our scooter and running man. So in this position, I've got that nice hip distance, I'm towards the front of my foot, I'm out of the hips, standing nice and tall, all those bits we just touched on. And then I take this leg back, hinging forward just slightly, and pelvis is still in neutral. So what I don't let happen is my pelvis tilt forward, so I've got a bit more of a curve here, because again, that's not nice on the lower back. And if you struggle with lower back issues, that could be one of the things that you need to think about, is really using those abdominals to pull up the front of your pelvis to stay in that neutral position, so you don't end up kind of compressing this area here, which is not nice. So when we reach the leg behind us, we want to be thinking of those three nice points of extension. So we're open at the hip, we've got a nice straight knee, and then I'm extended at the ankle as well. So nice strong line from the toes, hopefully all the way through, to the crown of my head. And all we do here is we bring it in and take it back. So although this leg moving, that form is really important to get that leg nice and straight. Equally important, if not more so, is this standing leg. That knee isn't coming in, that this hip isn't going out. We're nice and strong, and I often feel these exercises much more in that standing leg than the gesture leg that's moving. So really good one to think about kind of how that relates to your running posture. And then we can add arms. So we reach away as the leg goes away, and we bring it back. We reach away and bring it back. And as you bring that elbow in, should really help you drive the knee. So if you think when you're running, you can imagine pulling the pavement towards you. Really good for thinking about going up hills. That arm drive should really help what's happening with your legs. I'm going to swap to the other side. Don't want to do too much on one side rather than the other. So each time you shift side, we want to make sure we just take a moment just to stabilise and make sure we've got that really good form. There's a few exercises we do when we're standing. So some of them, we really talk about working on that back line of the body again, so we don't start to slump. We're always standing nice and tall. And then we also have some lunge sequences as well, which are a really slowed down version of the running gait. Going to do one more, and back in. So then that's kind of our standing section. That's normally around the first like 20-25 minutes of a class. And then we come down onto the mat to do some strength work. So normally to get down on the mat, we do a sequence of roll downs. I'm just going to show you one variation that works on a bit of rotation. So when we run, we don't want loads of rotation, because as I mentioned, we want to be going forward. We don't want to be losing any of that energy to the side. We do want to make sure that our spine is nice and mobile. So if you tread on something uneven, if you step off the curb, if you have to like change direction really quickly, you know that your spine has got that nice S shape. It's really nice and shock absorbent. It's going to be really resilient to any of those changes of direction or shifts in balance. So we don't want our spine to be really stiff. So those spinal exercises are really important. So with the roll down, I'm going to show you. I'm going to put my left foot in the middle of the mat and cross over my right. So there's a bit of a hands width between the two. And then my hips are going to face forward, and I'm going to try and keep them facing forward as long as possible. So when we do a roll down, we want to think about every vertebra individually rolling down through the spine, almost like a string of pearls. So you want to really think about maximising the space between each vertebra as you roll down. So to start with, we take a breath, stand that little bit taller. As you exhale, we start by bringing the chin to the chest, just extending the back of the neck, and then we roll down. I'm going to bring my right hand to the inside of my right leg. So depending on how tight your hamstrings are and your calves, it could be your knee, it could be your ankle, wherever is comfortable. Left hand comes to the waist, and I'm just going to rotate and take a breath. And then bring it back, bring the hand down and roll up nice and slowly. And then we'll just do one more on this side. So again, rolling down, I'm not allowing my shoulders to hunch as I roll down. They're still nice and back, they're away from my ears. Bring the hand across, other hand to the waist, and rotate. So it's a really good one to work on some thoracic rotation. And come back and roll up. And it's also nice to get a good stretch down your hamstrings and your calves while your foot is planted, because a lot of the time when we do a hamstring stretch down on the mat, our foot is in air, it's not kind of planted in that sort of realistic position when we're standing. So then swap it round, right foot comes to the middle, left foot comes over. I'm going to roll down through the spine. For any of these, normally if we do a roll down, we'll bend the knees as much as you need to at the bottom. For this one, we try and keep them straight. So bringing the hand to the inside of the leg and rotate. Again, working with the breathing. And bringing it back, reaching the hand down and rolling up. And we're going to do one more this side. Nodding the chin to the chest, rolling down, thinking about those vertebrae in between the shoulder blades. Through the middle back, into the lower back, all the way down, and then we rotate. Back to centre, and as we roll up, you can visualise those muscles pulling your pelvis underneath you, using those abdominals to help stack up your spine, bringing your shoulders back last, and your head up. So when we come down onto the mat, there's generally kind of three positions that we tend to be in when we're doing our exercises. So when we're on our front, we can be either in a modified plank or plank position, or we're generally working on a bit of extension of the spine. So I'm not going to show you any extension exercises today. I'm going to focus on some of the planks and strength work, because they tend to be what we do a little bit more of. And then I'll show you the exercises on the side, and then when we're supine on our back. So with the modified plank exercises, I'm just going to show you one that we do. So the elbow is slightly further forward than my shoulders, and my hands are just either going to be flat or going to be in fists. And we're going to keep our knees down, because sometimes when we come into that kind of full plank position, it's like a tongue twister, the hip flexors kick in and we're not engaging our abdominals as much as we should be. So this modified exercise really helps get into them. So nice and simple, up and out of the shoulders, so making sure there's no slumping here, the upper body is active. I'm going to take a breath, and as I exhale, really focus on using the glutes, so using the muscles around your bum to tuck the pelvis underneath you, like you're tucking a tail, pulling in that belly button to spine, and just lifting. And then we hold here for a breath, and then we lower down. So you might think this exercise isn't really a running one, because the legs are like perfectly still. We're lying down on the mat, but it's really training and working on the strength of our abdominals to hold the pelvis in a strong position when we're running. So we're just going to do two more of these. And this is an exercise we build on. So we build on it with a bit of leg movement. We can build on it by coming up onto our hands, but it's essential to make sure we're using the right muscles to achieve this to start with. So that's our modified plank. I'm just going to push back into a shell stretch. So sometimes when we're doing it, or most of the time when we do the exercises on our front, really important to then make sure we release any tension in the spine that might have built up. So just rounding on top of my knees, like I'm rounding over a beach ball, reaching my fingers forward and just taking some deep breaths before rolling up. So for our side work, there's a couple of different positions that we do, and we build them up. So In the foundation course and in the experience course, we'll start at one level and we'll progress kind of across the 6 weeks. So one of the positions we can be in is lying down on our side with our head on our arm, or we can fold the arm back, hand on the hip. Also, we can be up on the elbow, or we can be on the elbow and push the hips forward. So I'm just going to show you one of the exercises from here. With all of these, although we're going to work on moving the legs, that starting position needs to be really strong. So my heels, my sit bones, my shoulder are in a nice line, and my elbow slightly further out, and I'm active in the upper body. So my abdominals are on to hold me in that position, nice and strong, and then you can just bring the hand to the top hip. So we want those hips facing forward, nice and stacked, and then in this position we do a version of the exercise with standing, and we just open the top knee, squeezing the heels together, and again just getting into those muscles around the hip. So that's 4 of those. So we'll generally do these exercises in sets. The next 4 we're going to do is I'm going to lift the leg and bring it back, and lift and bring it back. So again, we can come up if we want to make this more challenging, but we want to make sure that form is really good. So I'm just going to come on to the other side. So we're nice and balanced. So if you're doing it with me, please make sure you're doing the same. We don't want to be walking funny tomorrow. And again, just opening the leg, so continuing to work on those muscles around the hip to make sure we're nice and strong and that pelvis is going to be in the position that we want. And again, 1, and 2, and 2 more, 3, and 4. And then the other position I'm just going to show you that's more in kind of our experience classes is where we come up into high kneeling. So some of these exercises on our sides, where we said about working these muscles, we also want to make sure we're focused on working on the inside of the leg as well. So that exercise with the leg lifts and lowers is actually really good to develop the muscles that we need to be able to stand on one leg effectively, even though you might think it doesn't relate when we're lying down. And this one I'm about to show you is the same. So with this, we reach the hand out to the side, and we come over, allowing that top leg to lift. So I've got nice straight line here, hopefully, and here too. And I take the leg out, so this hip's nice and open, and then we can do some hamstring kicks from here. So I'm just going to do 5, just to show you the exercise. And then we pause, and come back up with control, and come to the other side. So like I said, this is one of those exercises we can build on. We'll tend to just do this in the experience classes, because it's one of those we want to make sure that form is absolutely spot on. We bend the knee and come up. And that's the general gist of our side lying work. And then coming down onto my back. With the exercises in supine, some of these will be familiar if you've done Pilates before. But whereas in, if I teach a mat Pilates class, we tend to do a bit of work in an imprinted pelvis. So when you tilt your pelvis back to bring your lower back onto the mat, to give you that base of support through the body if you're doing exercises where you bring your legs up. In a runner's class, there are exceptions, but we generally tend to try and stay in that neutral pelvis, which is much more challenging because you've got a little bit of space in that lumbar spine, and we need to make sure those abdominals are working to really protect that and keep that shape, protect the lower back, and keep that pelvis neutral, even though there's less of the back of the body on the floor. So you're going to be more unstable as you kind of lift and lower your legs. So what we tend to do, just to make sure we've got that initial strength to do some of the exercises, is pop the fingertips under the lower back. And then we just start by doing some nice little leg lifts, just to make sure that there's no shift. So as I lift my legs, I'm not tilting over from one side to the other. I'm nice and stable. My abdominals are working really hard. Sometimes I think about, we tend to reference the bottom rib and the hip, and thinking about that measurement and that distance and making sure that that stays the same. There's no tilting of the pelvis in either direction, either side to side or back to front. And once we've got enough strength to be able to do this without any shift, we then move on to both legs coming up into the air. So again, I'm going to put my fingers here. If you've ever had physio and had done some of these exercises, they sometimes have a really clever little mat underneath that is like motion sensitive that will tell you if you're shifting. I don't have one of those. But if we lift the legs up, we can do a single leg stretch exercise where we reach the leg away. And what I tend to see a lot of in runners is a bit of this. We don't get that leg fully extended. I know a lot of runners as well, and sometimes I do, get clicky hips. So we really want to train those abdominals to really kick in to make sure that that strength is coming from here as that leg reaches away. And then if we're comfortable with this, we build on it. So we can do an ab preparation exercise. I'm not going to do one now, but where we bring the chin to the chest and we bring the head, neck and shoulders up off the floor. So if you're comfortable with that, then we add that in. So I bring my chin to the chest, I'm going to pause my knees and come up, still got this little bit of space, I'm still in neutral, and we take the legs away. So what we'll do with an exercise like this in an experienced class is you can make it into a tempo run. So speed up the breath, and we'll maybe do that for a minute, or we'll do it for 2 minutes, and then we'll have a little rest, and we'll do another exercise. So it's a bit more cardio, you can tell my voice is going a little bit. But again, we're trying to make sure we are really strong in the body whilst those legs are moving. And I'm going to have to come up, otherwise I'm not going to be able to talk to you much longer. So that's just one of the exercises we'll do down on the mat. There's others that are kind of similar, really working the core. And then we also do some glute bridges in sequences as well, which are good for, as they suggest, the glutes. So I'm going to show you a little flexibility sequence to finish, which is normally where we end a class. So standing at the end of the mat, I'm going to have another little scan through, make sure my posture is just as good as it was when we started. Going to start with that roll down. So knees are nice and soft, rolling down through the spine. I'm going to walk my hands forward into a downward dog. So pushing my heels down, feeling a good stretch through the back of the calves and the hamstrings, and taking a few deep breaths. We can do some work here to get deeper into the calf by just alternating legs and bending the knee, getting a little bit deeper in because we know those calves need a really good stretch. And then I'm going to lift one leg in the air. Hips are staying down. We're not doing a yoga pose or an opening. I'm going to swing the leg through and come up. And we're going to do a little opening of the hip flexor. So quite often for a hip flexor stretch, you see a lot of this, which is one way to do it. I think the way we tend to talk about is to make sure we get a good opening at that hip flexor, is to make sure we're tucking the pelvis under first. So we're really using the glutes to get that hip open before we then reach forward, just so you get into it that little bit deeper. So for me, that is a really good stretch. So I'm going to reach that arm up, making sure the rib cage doesn't pop, and take the arm over, reaching away, which is a good stretch for the deep muscles down the side of the body, and also gets into that hip just a little bit deeper. And then bring it back to centre, and lower the arm. And then we come into a hamstring stretch. So I'm just going to take my weight back, can flex the foot. Some people, this might be enough, which is fine, can stay it there, can leave it there. Otherwise, if you've got a little bit more length in your hamstrings, we can tuck the chin, round forward, and reach for the foot. And it's a common myth, like for runners, you don't need to have massively long hamstrings. You need that kind of strength, if you think of them like an elastic band. When you're running, you need them to ping right back to bring your leg behind you. And actually, the longer that elastic band is, potentially, the less strength you're going to have. So we need to make sure they're flexible, they're supple, we've got a good amount of range in them, but they do not need to be like super, super bendy and flexible. So coming up again, I'm going to bring my feet behind me and come back up into that downward dog. Reaching my left leg this time and bringing it forward. Adjusting if we need to, and again, tucking the pelvis to open the hip, reaching the arm up and taking it over. And again, just working with the breath. So again, deep inhale. And as you exhale, quite often with stretches, we can get into that stretch a little bit deeper. There's a bit more release. And then we bring it back, lower the arm, and come in for that hamstring stretch. And then we've got my favourite stretches coming up, which I'm being a little bit sarcastic. There are a lot of people's definitely their least favourite, I would say. But see what you guys think. Reaching forward, and getting some good breaths in as we stretch that calf and stretch the hamstring. A few more deep breaths. And then coming up, I'm going to take both feet behind me and we're going to stretch the foot. So just coming down, kneeling, nice stretch down the top of the foot. We want that good range in the ankle. So if you think when you're running, you're reaching that foot away, we're aiming to land on that forefoot, on that midfoot, is you need to have good ankle mobility to be able to get that. So just sitting like this when you're watching the TV sometimes or doing something on the floor, or gardening maybe, is a good one just to make sure we've got that mobility. And then we can intensify that further. I'm going to walk my hands forward and tuck my toes, and this is the one that everyone really loves when you then sit back on your feet. So we need to have a good 90-degree flexion at the toe. So when you're running and pushing that pavement or hill or trail away behind you, really important that we've got good movement in the toes. And also what this stretch is good for is that plantar fascia all along the bottom of the foot, which is why it's quite uncomfortable sometimes. But again, we know that's an area that people can get kind of irritated quite easily or get injured. So doing some of these stretches again, simple as they may look, is really good. So just going to show you those two, and we can build on them. We can build in some upper body stretches. We can build in some hip flexor stretches by reaching behind us, but I just thought I would show you those two. And I'm going to come up again. So at the end of the session, quite often, rather than sort of leaving it there, if you want to go out for a run after, if it's a morning class, we want to get some energy back in the body. So we just do some heel bounces, warm those calves up again, get the arms going, and 3, and 2, and 1. I'm wondering if anybody did this with me. And that's it, guys. Seeing who's watching. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Kat. Hi, Joel. Hi, Steve. Who else have we got? Liz, Leanne, Sam, Phil, Hannah, Alex, Fiona, Kathy. Oh, it's nice to see. It's nice to see everyone. If anyone had any questions, feel free to pop them on now, or if I'm not quick enough getting to them, then I'll have a little look afterwards. If you want to just put them when I post this later. And then I think for those of you that weren't here at the beginning, there's the next 6-week course. We've just finished the first one. The next ones are starting on Monday. So there's the foundation course on a Monday. If you're newer to running, just done Couch to 5K, or you know anyone that has, or you've not been running for a while, you're coming back from injury, or you're totally new to Pilates, we're doing that on a Monday at 6 o'clock. And then there's also an experienced class on Tuesday. So if you've been running for a while, if you've done a lot of Pilates and you want to join that one, then that is at 8 o'clock on Tuesday. So all the details should be on the page. Or else if you just want to give it a go sometime, there's a class on a Thursday night or a Friday morning. But it's lovely to see everybody. I am going to finish this little session and go and get myself a drink. But feel free to get in touch or kind of pop a comment below if there's anything else you wanted to know. Thanks everyone, enjoy your evening.